Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to go over the assembly of this Craftsman lathe that I bought used and took all apart, cleaned up, painted, and this video is about putting it all back together. We're going to go over some of the features and some of the things that I've noticed about it. So I realize that this video may not be useful unless you actually have a machine like this. I know Craftsman and Atlas are both sort of the same brand in a way, and so it might be relevant if you have either. So this is a 101.21400 model number. I'm sure there are similar models available too. All right, I have some of the lathe laid out with the parts ready to be assembled. This is most of it, and these are the parts that I'm going to start with first. I wouldn't be able to do this without the help of the manual, which kind of tells where everything goes. And I got this one on Amazon from ozarktoolmanuals.com. I highly recommend getting a manual if you don't already have one. This lathe does use a 1360 belt, and that's one of the few parts that I purchased that didn't come with this used lathe that I bought on Facebook Marketplace. So most of this has already been painted and cleaned up, so when I got it, it was really dirty, and I just took it all apart, painted what I could, and hopefully it goes together good and works as well as I hope it will. Alright, so this base piece is actually 3 parts. The feet are held on with screws, and there's 3 screws per foot. It just gets bolted to the main part there. I was unable to get the little linear gear off of it, so I went ahead and cleaned it up and painted it with the gears still on. Even though there's screws in there, they have these rivets that hold it on, and I didn't feel like drilling those out, so I just left it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and install this piece here. I've got this propped up so that I don't damage these little oil things when I put it together. It uses these 4 large screws, and if anything requires hefty ugga-duggas on this whole thing, it's these guys. My impact driver had a real difficult time getting these out, so I'm going to use the impact when I put it back together. Alright, next I want to assemble the large threaded rod here so that I can install it onto the base unit. This is pretty simple. I didn't take out the key, I just left that in, but that large gear fits on there. This spacer goes on, and a little bolt and washer on that side. So this piece here goes on there, and you want to make sure that the screws are going to point out this way when you assemble this. So I'm going to put this on the entire rod there, and I do need to sort of thread it a little bit because the inside of this piece is not perfectly smooth, but it's good enough. So I noticed a little bit of torsion on the bar, so I'm going to go back and loosen and retighten these guys Make sure that there's no unnecessary torsion in the whole system. All right, for this guy, the manual alludes to the center gear being a little bit larger than the one on the right, so I'm going to use this one here. It's got the metal bushing on the inside, and it will go right here. The smaller gear will go right next to it. And this larger one, which I was actually unable to get off, right? It does have a little washer here that allows it to sort of rotate as you tighten that nut, because you'll have to get something, a really thin wrench to tighten this down onto the main block there. But I was unable to get that gear off of the shaft. So that's what that assembly looks like. All right, it's time to install this piece. I went ahead and got the flattest washer I could find. I don't think it came with this, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to use it anyway. And I think that I am able to get this installed by just using this for the most part. And then this selector can move up and down. So I probably won't need to use this special tool that I made to tighten this nut that's on the inside here. I'll try that in a little bit. While we're over here, we might as well put these pieces in. This piece will go on here, and it has a bushing on the inside. This will come out, and it can be greased, so I'll put that on there along with the washer and nut, and this should be able to slide right in there and tighten up. Same thing with this one. That goes on there. And according to the diagram, I think it should go that direction. Let's see. Nope. This direction. Later on, I'll go ahead and set the gear mesh correctly using a piece of paper in between the gears and make sure that that mesh is correct. So I'm going to install this piece right here. It's supposed to make contact with that gear there. I went ahead and drilled out a couple of these holes to make sure that they weren't as messed up from previous use as possible. And the way we do that is the spring goes in here, and actually I thought I lost this spring, so I was glad to find it on the floor. I had to order a couple more from eBay. They're kind of expensive, so don't lose these. The spring goes in first, and then we're gonna put in a little ball. So put your fingers on the edge so don't lose the ball either. It's kind of hard to see, but it's sitting in there on top of the spring, And when we push the other piece in, it will compress the spring, but that will be a little bit of a trick. All right, so I've got the spring in there, I've got the ball in there, and in order to get this piece in, what I'm going to do is use this little piece of aluminum tubing that I've cut that is a little bit smaller than the hole where it goes in. I'm going to press the ball down with an Allen wrench, and I'm going to press this piece of aluminum tubing in so that it presses the Allen wrench out. So now I've got the tubing in there, and the reason I use the tubing is because it has this little pointy end to it, and so when I press this in, hopefully it will displace the tubing and keep the ball in there such that I can press this in. Yeah, there we go. Might need to give it some taps. There we go. So that's in there and it's not going anywhere. All right, let's talk about belts real quick. In order to change the belt on this thing, you have to remove this entire axle and this gear here, which neither of them are easy by any means. When I first got this machine, I thought that, well, I knew the belt was bad, so I went and purchased this belt here, which you can connect and make however long you want. The beauty of this is you don't have to completely disassemble the machine to put this on, but this seemed a little bit sort of hokey, and I wanted to use a good new belt if I could. So since I took the machine apart, I went ahead and purchased a belt. This assembly here is gonna need to go on probably first. It needs a washer to keep those two pieces from rubbing, and when that goes on, this piece here will go on, and I've got a little retainer there. This hole right here is going to need the spring and the ball that goes in there like that, and it will be pressed up against the case of the body over there. Oh, almost lost the ball. So I imagine I'll put that in, put this on, and tighten this screw so that nothing, so the ball doesn't get lost. And then I'll put in this shaft, and we'll have to put a pin through there to keep the handle on. And this pin is basically the trick of getting this whole thing off. And I didn't understand that the first time I looked at this, so we'll go ahead and assemble it. Alright, so I got all excited about making a video, and I forgot to put the belt on. So this means I have to go ahead and undo what I did. And get this belt on here. Now that I know that pin is all that is needed. It's not the end of the world if I need to undo this again. There we go. All right, now we're in business. All right, it's time to install the main shaft. I was unable to easily get this bearing off, but I think this bearing was replaced before I bought the machine, so it was in pretty decent shape. So I'll go ahead and reuse them. Now, coming from an automotive background, I usually pack bearings with grease, but since these have oilers up here, I'm inclined to not grease these bearings and just use the oil. And the manual says to put oil in this on a daily basis, so I'll go ahead and use that method and see how it goes. First, this part goes in there. Then this goes on here. Then I believe, oops, sorry. When this gear goes on, these little holes right here will need to interface with that. So this is the correct orientation for that. Then this goes on. Now this piece right here has these basically like copper bushings, one on each side. They do come out, but I pounded these ones in. This screw right here, you have to take the screw out and drop oil in it, and there's a space in between these two copper bushings where the oil will actually kind of sit. So that's how you can more or less fill it up with oil and let it operate well oiled. So I'm gonna put this on next, and then it's this piece here with the little screw on it. All right, now we need the other bearing. And let's see. It should be letting me press this bearing all the way in. There we go. So there we go. Don't want to go too far. I will have to tighten that little screw in there. So this grease cover goes on there eventually. I'll have to pound that on. This grease cover will go here. And we have this piece and the gear and the retainer. This retainer is threaded, so this is how you tighten the bearings and basically reduce any slop that may occur. All right, so it turns out I found a better way. I don't need this piece of wood right here. What I'm gonna do is put this gear on there, and I'm actually I found a nut that fits on this thread right here, so I'm just gonna use the nut to basically tighten down the axle, and this will cause the bearings to be pressed into place. Oh yeah, this is much better than pounding on it. Let's see, how far do I have to go? I wanted to make sure that I got far enough to where I could put that key back in. And so it is proper to put the large portion of that in first. Then I'm going to put the key in. And this gear here goes on with the little spacer on that side. Okay, and this piece threads right on. And I'll tighten that later after everything is together. All right, here's a helpful hint. Make sure that you put the key in right here so that this gear doesn't move on this shaft when you get it all together. So I had to pop the axle off a little bit and redo everything that I just did. So hopefully I've done it right this time. There we go. That ensures that these two don't have the ability to rotate, at least with reference to each other. All right, there's two of these set screws here on this large gear. This one is to make sure that this little pin that pops in and out does not move once it's set. This one here is to make sure that this gear does not move back and forth on the shaft. So I've this one happens to be an Allen wrench, and so I've tightened that down as much as I could. This one here is a flat screwdriver, and it can be easily tightened or loosened there. So I've adjusted this over here so that this piece has a little bit of, you can kind of hear the play, but it doesn't actually move very much. And I just don't want this this piece here to make contact with this gear when it spins. So when this engages, you know, the output shaft will need to spin. So I'm going to loosen that, pull that pin out, tighten it back up. And so now there's a gear ratio between the output shaft and this over here. Sorry. Now that there's a gear ratio between this guy here, where the belt is, and the actual output shaft. So I forgot to mention that this little pin right here that you can pull in and out, you don't want this thing to come all the way out. It would be bad if it did that. So I forgot to put this pin back in, and it goes some pliers to hold it in. And hopefully so it doesn't take much. All right, moving on to the back side. I need to install this piece right here to hold the swinging door on. And to do that, I'm going to use the bolts that it came with. And I'm going to use some washers on here so that I don't tear up the paint job too much. This piece right here will actually go on such that the short end between the hole and the edge will go on the outside, and this whole piece will clamp on right here. And that can be adjusted later once I get the door on. All right, next is the cover, and this piece will go on. These little pins will just press into place. And to do that, I'm going to use the channel locks. Hopefully that will be easy to do. All right, so that's on. All right, this door is, when I cleaned this up and painted it, I tapped out these, or removed these little rivets that hold the threading chart on. And they can be done by sticking a pin in the hole on the outside and just tapping out those rivet things. Now those rivets are actually kind of a semi-threaded little device that they can be removed. So, and they go back in fairly easily with a hammer once you're done. To put this door on, I'm going to use the little shaft it came with. And there is a little bit of play between the bracket here and the door. So I am going to use 2 number 8 washers right there, just to kind of let it have something to glide on a little bit, instead of, depending on the paint to wear away like I know it will. So I'm going to try and get that in there with both washers, which is kind of a trick. There we go. And this will need some gentle tapping. Alright, so these little oily holes right here are probably supposed to have a felt-based material in there that lets the oil kind of sit and not drain out all at once. So my Dremel kit came with these little buffing pads that look like they're felt-based, and I'm just going to cut one up and get it to the right size where it fits into each one of those. Alright, now we're going to assemble the smaller of the axes. First thing I'm going to do is put in the Gibbs here. There's 4 screw holes, and I want the one with 4 indents in it. The indents go for 1 per screw, and the screws just screw in. I would probably tighten the screws not all the way, but once we get it together, then those can be adjusted. All right, now we can put the brass nut in here, and I want to make sure that, well, there's no easy way to tell which way it went in before, so I'll just put it in like that. On this one, I want to make sure that the little line on there is facing upwards so I can see it. All right. So for the next one, we're going to put the little Allen head screws in here, but they have these little pieces here that need to fit in to the holes that actually make contact with the this piece here. So I'm going to put those in. Put this on. And then thread in the little Allen screws. All right, next we're going to put in the Gibb screws for here, and you'll notice that they're not the same size. This one is longer and it goes in the center. This piece goes in here, and this goes there with one screw holding it together. All right, so this assembly is going to be a little bit more complicated. I didn't want to take these things out. I couldn't find a way to take this apart, so I just left it in and painted it. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in the gear here, and I couldn't tell if this piece had a right way or a wrong way, but what I'm going to do is orient it so that the oil holes are accessible, and hopefully that's the correct way to do it. Before I do that though, this right here needs to be installed, and when I took it apart it had two of these little brass spacers there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in first, because those screws are going to be covered up by this thing here. So let's see. Alright, same kind of thing for this side. This had a little spacer here. In fact, actually there's three of them in there. Alright, this square top screw goes in the top here, and it clamps down on this piece. Okay, I'm going to leave that a little bit loose for now while I and tighten it after I put it on the machine. So the next piece is going to be all of these guys. So I can't tell the difference between these two. I think they're the same part, M6 12A, M6 12A, so I don't think it matters which end is up. So those go on like that, and they will fit in here so that this can open and close. Let's see, is that the way I want it? Probably want it like this. Nope. I want it this way. And the reason is when it's clamped down, I want the handle to be down, and when I open it up I want it to be up. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. Okay, now the last piece is this guy right here. So this piece here has a little Allen screw in here. I think that this little threaded screw right here fits in as like maybe a cover of some type. So if that's not where that goes, then let me know. Alright, so it looks like in order to get this thing on, I may need to undo these screws here. Now we can finally slide this piece on, so it should just go right on. So this piece here is a Morse taper number 1, and it threads into this bearing thing. I ordered another Morse taper number 1 so that I could put a chuck in here and have a drill bit. But that goes in there. When after I get everything put together, I think I might machine down this edge and clean it up a little bit. I don't know who had this thing before, but it looks a little bit used. So after putting this together, I found that I had a washer that I wasn't sure where it went. This is a curved, sort of springy washer, and I think it'd probably go best if it were in between these two washers, and put a little spring tension on this piece right here. That way it will sort of stay where I put it, because there's really nothing holding it against the lead screw when it's engaged. So I think that extra tension is going to be nice, and it can be you know, just pulled off when not needed. But I think that's where I'm going to keep it. So this tool holder is a little unique. It has a little curved piece here that goes in, and the tool holder itself will be clamped on top of that. But what this actually does is allow the height of the tip of the tool to be adjustable with this type of mount. And once it gets clamped down, it is pretty sturdy. So I thought that was kind of unique. I've mostly familiar with the 4-position tool holders that are on some of the newer lathes, and so this was kind of unique. So one of the things that I liked about the original setup of this lathe is the aluminum on forward and reverse switch, and I went ahead and kept that. I did buy a new on-off switch that I use for turning it on and off. This one does have a middle position that basically turns the motor off. Inside this motor is connections for your 2 AC wires to run it. There's also a blue and yellow wire in there that is for the starting winding, which uses the capacitor to lead or retard the starting winding so that you can determine direction. If you need to reverse the direction of this motor, you need to reverse how the blue and yellow wires are connected. When I put this together, I was worried that the wood here was too soft for the attachment of this pulley base right here, And so I went ahead and put some aluminum down to allow it to have more surface area and be a little bit more steady when I bolt it down to the top of the table. So this lathe originally comes with this milling attachment, which should just fit right on where this piece does. You do have to loosen the 2 Allen screws there, and this piece should come off, and this milling attachment will go right on there and be able to hold some type of a motor in here to drill into the work. So when I bought this, it did come with a motor that is supposed to be attached to the milling portion, but I don't think I am ever going to use this one. I think I'm going to get a proper spindle if I ever feel the need to use this. So the main reason I custom made this table and made it so high was because I don't have room for it in my garage. I have a CNC laser that I want to have accessible as much as possible, and so I made the table so that I could position it and store it, the new lathe, on top of the CNC laser, and this gives me a little bit more room in my workshop. Alright, I hope this video was useful to you. It sure was fun putting it together, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Thank you so much.